Welcome into Basketball by Association, ladies and jelly beans. My name is Arky Shea. That's Joel C. Cordes. Joel, I don't know if you noticed this. The playoffs are underway.
They are. Way to start the show with a calendar item. It is that time of year, isn't it? And we're through the, first game of every first round playoff series. And
That's true.
There's been some doozies. We got through a little bit of the play-in tournament after last week's show. There was some games left to go. A couple of really fun, almost classic. At this point, there's not many play-in games to choose from, but when you've got 3 seasons, there was a couple of classic play-in tournament games in there as well. It's such a fun time of year, and just about every series has something really intriguing going on with it, Arky Shea.
Well, let's start getting into those. We won't spend too much. Actually, we won't really spend any time on the play-in stuff. But pretty much how we nailed it, right? We pretty much got it.
You were 6-0. I mean, you got it. I hope you had some money down on some of those. I was 5-1. The only one that I missed, I think, was I took the Cavs over the Hawks, and one team had Trae Young and the other team didn't, and that's all it came down to because the Cavs honestly outplayed the Hawks for almost that entire game, and Trae still just erased all that.
I will just say this, and then we'll move on. Your T-Wolves almost made me not go 6-0 on this, but you know what? As I text you a nice sporty win, I think after they beat the the Clippers, I think they
Clippers,
beat for that comeback win. That hey, you know what? Who needs Karl Anthony Towns to be good? Right? Come on. I mean, that dude's just like he's a decoy.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's why you got multiple stars. And fortunately, D'Lo stepped up in that game where, and Anthony Edwards did as well. And you saw the same thing, kind of in reverse on Sunday or Saturday, I should say, when the Timberwolves did beat the Grizzlies in game 1. Towns had a fantastic game. Anthony Edwards had a fantastic game. It was D'Lo who really, really struggled, but they're deep, man. I'm glad that hopefully more people on a national stage are going to get to see what I've been saying all year long with this Timberwolves team. They're not perfect. It's flawed. It's young, but they're athletic. They're hungry. They can attack you from a bunch of different ways, and the roster is sneaky deep.
Yeah, and they're now on NBA TV. So nice job.
Well,
nice job.
For game 2 at least. Game 3 they get to be on ESPN. So I'm looking forward to that.
We think so, but who knows? I'm just gonna say, listen, that's what I'd like to think. Anyway, let's get straight to it. I want to start with the most exciting game from over the weekend. Quite obviously, was the buzzer beater for the Boston Seas to beat the.
Are we really not going to name the episode?
Oh, I'm sorry, Joel.
I mean, we could wait till the end, but you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to wait until we get to the Milwaukee series, and we talk about that, and we'll name episode 102 after somebody from Milwaukee, and that'll be our big clue. We'll just keep it as a cliffhanger for now. We won't steal the thunder from that Boston-Brooklyn series where you want to go. So take us back.
Boston-Brooklyn game 1 came down to the very, 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 very end, and Boston gets the win at home, and Kevin Durant, I saw a side-by-side comparison of him looking like that big video of the animated skeleton that was going around the internet a few weeks ago outside the plain view. But Joe, a really, really good game 1. We expect this series to be really good and tight throughout. A defensive mishap, though, at the end. Shocking. It was defense that sort of did Brooklyn in at the very end. But really, honestly, more shocking at who the defensive mishap was on. Joel, talk to me.
That was a fantastic game. Brooklyn played better defense than expected. Boston had some defensive breakdowns, which is not entirely expected considering that they've been really the elite defensive team through the second half of the season. I felt that Brooklyn was getting a lot of superstar calls for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It seemed like every time one of those guys went to the basket, any bump was getting them to the free throw line. Whereas how many times did Jaylen Brown get thrown to the ground, or just planted?
Ain't earned it yet.
And no call, nothing, and Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart had issues with that. The Celtics, granted, did miss a lot of good looks inside down the stretch. It's part of what allowed the Nets to come back in.
Yeah.
And you really saw everything that you wanted to see, that you expected to see. You saw Brooklyn's star power on full display. Yeah. Kyrie Irving absolutely brought it in that game. And I know we'll get to the middle finger and we'll get to the crowd and everything like that, but you talk about like stepping up to the moment and you talk about waking the bear, and both of those things happened. Kyrie Irving was just dazzling.
He was.
And, Durant played a good game, especially defensively, but you also then saw what you wanted out of Boston, which was they made Durant work. They made Durant miss some shots. They were up in his grill. Obviously, the entire defensive plan was structured around, we're going to make Durant work as hard as possible. They did that. You saw Boston's ability to attack from multiple different angles. 4 different guys had over 20 points. Tatum had 31. And yet, what do we know about the playoffs? Superstars beat stars and stars beat ensembles. And it just comes down that way. Not only in games, you might be able to steal a game here or there without one of those things, but especially in series. And Boston had just enough star power, but it almost didn't matter because of the superstars on that Brooklyn Nets team.
I'll be fascinated. Again, I think this series is a 7-game, no doubt about it. It looks really, really special. Kyrie's been dazzling since the playoff lights turned on. 39 and 42 minutes in this game. 39 and 42 minutes. It's wild how good he was in that game. And really going back to the play-in game too. And Joe, Kevin Durant, you're right. He had a nice 23-point outing, but he was 9 of 24 shooting, 1 of 5 from 3. And this is what Boston's calling card has been. They have lived on this defense this entire stretch since the beginning of the calendar year. And they got after you, man. They did a lot of great switching, a lot of late double teams on Kyrie Irving, forcing him to, I guess if you call it an offhand every now and then, like they would try to they forced bad shots from Kevin Durant. Like this was a really stellar defensive effort, and still at the very end, they could have won that game if they just hadn't let a defensive slip up at the very end. Joel, I love this series, man. This series is just exactly what playoff basketball is supposed to be all about. You got big names, lots of guys who can score, and 2 teams just getting after it.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. And, Kyrie Irving didn't get any gimme points. If he got any gimmies, they were because he manufactured it, getting into the lane around somebody on a fantastic move or a blow by. But how many contested shots did he hit? So it's not as if the defense, a lesser defensive team would have teed off on Kevin Durant. And because of all that focus, it would have left somebody like Kyrie Irving open. Boston's defense was so good that they were teeing off on Durant and making Kyrie Irving work for every single shot he got. And, Nick Claxton came up huge for the Nets, making some hustle plays and some putbacks. He's a guy who can play above the rim a little bit more than Andre Drummond does, even though Drummond's such a load inside. But it was Claxton who got the call for 31 points. And you do wonder whether his impact would have been as big if Boston has Robert Williams III kind of roaming the middle and maybe blocking some shots. Is Robert Williams able to rearrange a shot or 2 from Kyrie Irving? That's a big what if, and we might get an answer to that late in the series, because I agree it probably will go 7 games and it's going to be a punch counter punch. Defense wins championships, but in the NBA, better offense does beat defense, and that's where the Nets they've got something that very few other teams in the league have, and it's 2 guys who can just get their points. And if you're going to slow them down, you're going to work so hard in doing that it's going to exhaust some energy that you could have used on offense. It's going to exhaust some energy that should have been used on other guys. Brooklyn's got enough other people that, Seth Curry didn't have a great game. Goran Dragic played pretty solidly, but you get the sense that either he or Patty Mills will probably have a big game. And Bruce Brown, who, everybody's been saying has been the Nets' 3rd best player through probably the last 2/3 of the season here. Bruce Brown only had 5 points. Now, he was tasked with playing good defense over 37 minutes on Tatum and occasionally on Jaylen Brown. But there's just a lot of different variables, and that's why even though Boston got up a number of times and they had momentum, they had the crowd behind them, they were fighting their tails off, You never felt safe ever. But you also, when looking at what Brooklyn got, you're like, man, Boston, they're just going to keep coming at you. They've got so many different wings. They've got so many different ways to attack you. They're going to make good team plays. And ultimately, it was a phenomenal team play at the end of the game in a broken floor situation. But heads up basketball where Smart and Horford and Jaylen Brown all knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing in those split second, decisions. And Jason Tatum made a phenomenal winning basketball play on the cut and an even better play on the move. And that's what makes him a star, a borderline superstar. And Boston had just enough, man. But you're right. This is exactly what playoff basketball is supposed to be like. And it is what makes even the first round so compelling sometimes.
Yeah, I do also want to add that Al Horford should be getting some love. 20 and 15 in that game, a stupendous effort from him. And Boston didn't get shied away by the moment. They were up double digits going into the fourth quarter. Brooklyn got their way back into the game, and they were down going into that final possession, and yet they just sort of stayed within themselves, and they stayed with the play throughout. It didn't look like they were going to get sort of an open shot, something was going to be contested right at the buzzer, but again, heads up, heady play by Boston, sort of seeing the breakdown and taking advantage of it. And you just sort of see Kyrie and you see Kevin Durant's face right after it. It's like, that's how this is going to end. That's how this game is going to end after all of this. Oh, it's such a crappy way to go. I wanted to move to the next game, but if you wanted to talk about Kyrie throwing the birds to the fans, we can. There is no love lost there. These two. I was about to say two teams. This team of people in the Boston Celtics faithful and Kyrie Irving just straight up don't like each other. There were the birds. They were in the middle of the game. There's the video afterwards where people were taunting him and he threw up birds behind his head before an inbound play. And then there's the taunting on his way back to the locker room where he told someone who said he sucked that they could do their own little twist on the suck. So, Joe, again, like there's so much crap given to the NBA about everybody loves each other and there's no rivalries and everyone just wants to hug at the end of these games. It's fun seeing animosity on the court. I mean, it takes the fans to do it in this case, but I love the fact that there's someone that can get a little, I don't want to say rattled, but it could be in the mindset of a Kyrie Irving who is supposed to be super zen, that this Boston fan base can still get to him.
It was fun. You think of Trae Young last year with the Knicks, and I know you don't want to think about it, but that was a fun moment of those playoffs of somebody, the fan base getting on him and him just relishing it instead of trying to zone it all out. It was, okay, I'm going to play right into this. I'm going to take a sick pleasure in trying to twist the knife. And we saw Kyrie doing that same thing. It's no different than what made Reggie Miller so hated, but so compelling and theatrical back in the day with the Indiana Pacers. Again, with Knicks fans, but with plenty of other fan bases.
That's true. But he didn't put 11 points up in 2 seconds on everybody else. So
right. And Kyrie, you've got the built-in history here. So I don't have a problem with him rising to the moment, not only with his play, but hey, if you're willing to pay the fines and you want to interact, don't take it any further than you did. And I would say the same thing to Boston Celtics fans. It's fine to razz on a guy, to go after him, to boo him every time he touches it. Don't take it any further to where something that's good and compelling and competitive right now crosses a line, which then ruins this type of experience for everybody. Don't take it there.
No, this is great.
This is great.
I think last time someone actually threw a water bottle onto the court and threw it at Kyrie, and that was unfortunate. But this other kind of hate, man, like you pay a lot of money to go to those Celtics games. Boo the crap out of that guy. He told you he was going to come back to the Celtics if you would have him, and immediately starts planning up to go with Kevin Durant in the next offseason. You should hate that guy. That guy tried to love up on you and was cheating on you behind the back. You should be spurned.
Yeah, and on that flip side, Kyrie has gotten enough hate from them, and he's risen to enough challenges now over the course of this season, especially where he's been kind of on this FU tour coming back, that it's fun to see him so motivated, right? Because motivated Kyrie is the best Kyrie. When he's lackadaisical and going through the motions is when he becomes a very talented but underachieving player, and the NBA is littered with guys, especially at the point guard position, who were kind of that way. But when Kyrie is locked in and in this attack mode, and there's going to be a legend here that spurs out of this series either way. It's either going to be Kyrie rose to the challenge in a Reggie Miller-like fashion, in a Trae Young-like fashion, a Steph Curry-like fashion. We've had those type of series, and he's just going to rip the hearts out of Celtics fans, or he's going to come up short, and the Celtics are going to have that internal legend about how the crowd rose up and helped their team to victory. And we all know that Boston is littered with legends like that throughout their history too. So it's going to be fun either way, again, as long as everybody keeps it relatively fun.
Yeah. Keep it cool, keep it classy, but yeah, boo the crap out of that guy. I'm cool with it. Let me just straight move on to your team. Your team goes into Memphis, and Joel, they're leading the Grizzlies after putting up 130 points on the Grizzlies. And I feel like I almost looked up a call the Grindhouse. Whatever Memphis is still calling it now. Joel, I don't want you to take a victory lap yet, but that had to feel pretty good. Like that even though like the biggest highlight I saw that was Ja Morant's dunk, and everybody just wanted to talk about that. That was a really good effort from
how about Karl Anthony Towns like ripping the rim, coming down the lane? That was Shaq-esque on his.
But this is one of those, like, a lot of the media we've been pushing Ja Morant now, right? Like for what, like as the superstar, no matter what the score was in the game and the final score was, that was going to be the highlight from it, the main highlight. But still, Minnesota, despite having to play on NBA TV in their next game, rose up to the occasion, put themselves on the national radar, and Joel, we're getting at least 5 out of this.
Yeah, and I think this is a 7-game series. We talked about at the beginning, maybe 6. I picked Memphis from the start. I don't want to, but I do think they're that good. Minnesota coming in had some momentum. You were a little bit concerned because they almost lost that game against the Clippers. They really almost did, and the Clippers, just a veteran unit. Minnesota was making some very poor mistakes, a lot of turnovers, which they did in the first half against Memphis as well. Towns had that well-documented, just awful game, which you got to credit something to the Clippers defense out of that, but Towns just played right into their hands. Fortunately, D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards both stepped up. And then coming into this game against Memphis, again, you just wondered whether there would be that step forward by the Timberwolves, that maturing, to know what it was going to be like in a playoff atmosphere that so few of these Timberwolves have ever gone through. Patrick Beverley has done it. Towns did it, but not successfully. In 2017, Tayshaun Prince has been in some big playoff games, but that's really about it as far as the core group of guys goes. And you did see growth. You saw Towns very specifically play a smart, aggressive game right from the get-go. You saw Anthony Edwards continue to just introduce himself to the broader NBA world. The kid is uber talented.
Yeah.
It's very rare that a number 1 pick like him gets overshadowed by those below him, but everybody's wanted to talk about LaMelo from that draft. Kind of in the same way that DeAndre Ayton gets overshadowed by Luka and Trae from his draft, but it doesn't happen very often.
We'll talk about Ayton,
yeah, this is a chance for Anthony Edwards to introduce himself to everybody because he is that good. He is going to be on the national radar for a long time, and knock on wood, God willing, he's in a Timberwolves uniform for a long time, maybe his entire career. But I am on record as saying that if Edwards is able to stay in Minnesota for the bulk or entirety of his career, not only is he a lock to go down as the second best Timberwolf in history, and this is over Karl Anthony Towns, but there is the chance that he becomes a more impactful and successful player in Minnesota Timberwolves history than even Kevin Garnett. And think about that for a second, because Garnett was a lock Hall of Famer, a champion, with the Celtics and what have you. But I think Anthony Edwards' Timberwolves teams, for a lot of different circumstances, but also because he's that good, his Timberwolves team could be more successful in the grand scheme of things than KG's T-Wolves teams were. And that's a lot of what ifs, but Memphis is going to have their hands full. And I'm still picking the Grizzlies because they've been through this before. Mm-hmm. Winning a game one on the road is tough. It is tough. But being able to follow that up and continue that is something that I think the Grizzlies are more equipped for. They've got a lot of different guys that can score too. Really, 4 out of their 5 guys in the starting lineup, with the exception of Steven Adams, who it's just not his job. 4 out of the 5 guys in that starting lineup can put down 20 on you, really without a second thought. The Wolves have got 3 out of 5 in their starting lineup, and then maybe Malik Beasley coming off the bench, who had 23. So it's very evenly matched on the offensive end. Memphis is the better defensive team, but the Wolves will make up for defensive mistakes with just some sheer athleticism, some length, and the fact that when they do turn you over, which they do by gambling a lot and being over aggressive, when they do turn you over, it gets scary in transition when they're out on the run.
I will say that watching game one made me believe more in your T-Wolves as far as making this a long series and who knows, maybe even winning it. Like, there's so much, and you've already used the word, athleticism on this team. Like, it's really difficult not to like to watch them play. Like, you really have.
They can attack
you have to be
from so many different ways. You know?
You just have to be a fan of the team they're playing against, not to just enjoy watching them. Like, they're a blast. Just like Memphis is a blast to watch. That's why this should not have any games on NBA TV. I'm just figure out this.
I agree.
I know it's not the 2 names that everyone's sort of used to, but it's the style that you want on national TV to promote your brand and to be exciting for the playoffs. No matter who wins that individual game, the chances are both teams are going to be in the 110 to 115 neighborhood by the end of the game.
Despite playing decent defense,
Right. Despite it. And you can get highlight dunks. You're going to get, like, you've got superstars on the court.
You got some big blocks at the rim. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. had 7 blocks in the game, right? Like, and you had a couple of big stuffs by Jaden McDaniels coming in. It is fun, and the Wolves can beat you from the 3. They can beat you above the rim. They can post you up. They got a couple of guys who will slash. You've got D'Angelo Russell, even though he did not have a good game, guaranteed to take and make some crazy shots that very few other players in the league would even have the conscience to attempt. And then on the other side, you've got Ja just absolutely defying gravity. You got shooters in Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks, and Brooks is just a chippy, hard-nosed player who loves contact almost as much as Steven Adams does. Jaren Jackson is so athletic. They got a great game out of Brandon Clark, and DeAnthony Melton is a guy off the Grizzlies bench that can give you 20 points, and it didn't happen. He only had 2 points, but I don't think that's going to happen very much in this series from Melton.
Yeah, you could put like the Mavs Utah on NBA TV for a game or two. That's okay with me compared to this series specifically. But yeah, so Minnesota, 6 guys in double figures, shot 50% from the field, outscored Memphis by 27 from beyond the arc, outscored by 11 on the free throw line, and still that game, they punched Memphis in the mouth early, scored 41 points in the first quarter, maintained the lead the whole game, and in the fourth quarter pulled away. Like, I don't know. I would like to see Minnesota when things aren't nearly, when you're not shooting 50% from the field, right? Like, I would like to see how the team responds in a game where you can't be as free as you were in game one, because traditionally speaking, it gets tighter as you go to the playoffs. Not all your shots fall. You're not supposed to hit 50% the entire postseason. So what happens then? Everything went great in game one. Let's find out what the adjustments were made by Memphis, and let's see what adjustments are made by Minnesota. But this is tracking to be another great series.
Memphis is going to throw everything they have at Anthony Edwards, I think, in game 2 at least. And they're going to dare Towns and Russell to both have great games at the same time. Because I think that's the big question mark for Minnesota. What happens when Anthony Edwards, who still is only a sophomore, I mean, this is just his second year, and it will only be his second official playoff game. He has had monster games during the regular season. He has also had the expected struggles of a player his age. So what happens when he's not that great equalizer? Because so far, like I've said, he's been the guy that's kind of tied it all together and given them some insulation when it's been Towns or D'Lo. Like, heaven help the Grizzlies if all three of those Wolves are having a phenomenal game, because I don't think you're not going to survive that one. But there's enough youth there, and Towns has been inconsistent enough in the postseason, and Russell is just an inconsistent player by nature. There's enough variables there where Minnesota could get themselves into trouble, and this is why the Timberwolves, as talented as they are, and for all those plaudits, only won 46 games this year, because there are plenty of cases where they made dumb defensive plays, guys got in foul trouble, especially Towns, or you just didn't have enough of your star players clicking on any given night. And for all of the depth that they have, there's not enough other guys, save Malik Beasley, who's also been inconsistent. There's not a lot of other guys there who are just going to bail you out by nature. Whereas Memphis, again, with that veteran nature, I feel like it's Ja as expected, and then you're going to get 2 or 3 guys out of a list of 5 or 6 that will step up behind him any given night, and it's going to be different guys, and they are okay with that, and they play well.
They've done
with
it all
that.
year. They've done it. They've done it without Ja. Like they were superb without Ja. Like they were, they were okay.
Tyus Jones can give you a big game, and Kyle Anderson could give you a really effective game. And that's 9 guys that we've mentioned already on the podcast here. That's the difference.
A game where it looked like Milwaukee was about to pull away from the Chicago Bulls in game 1, but Chicago nailed down and hunkered down on the defense, fought their way back into the contest. Milwaukee ends up getting game 1 win. But Joel, for me, I wanted to say I was surprised at how close this game did get back to after it looked like it was going to be a Milwaukee rout. But I feel like I've also seen Milwaukee do this a bunch of times before, so I'm not stunned, but I am a little surprised. I'm definitely not surprised that they got the game 1 win at home. Joel, talk to me a little bit about what you saw from Chicago-Milwaukee game 1.
Well, speaking of Milwaukee, this is episode 102. You've waited 28 minutes to find out who it's named for, and it is a former Milwaukee Buck great who did log 102 playoff games. He's also a Seattle Supersonics great, and he is one of the original, if not the original, stretch 5 in NBA history, and the man had one heck of a perm. Arky, Shea, you got any guesses on who this might be?
No, hit me.
Oh, it is the Jack Sikma episode.
Did not have Jack Sikma on the board.
And we won't go too much into Sikma's career other than his numbers would be pedestrian from the three-point line in today's game, but one of those pioneers who took advantage of the early rule change and was kind of iconic for being able to do so. But yeah, back to your point with the Chicago Bulls and the Milwaukee Bucks. Chicago is almost at full strength. No Lonzo Ball for the rest of the year, but Patrick Williams is back. Alex Caruso is back. Levine is back in the lineup at least. They made some moves at the deadline to, try to bolster their depth just a little bit. And they were the number 1 seed at one point in the year. We all kind of thought it's probably not sustainable, but it is a good team. The fact that this was so low scoring was kind of surprising, but then again, it's 2 good defensive teams really slugging it out. I thought the difference in the end was that Chicago just does have more depth, Milwaukee just does have more depth than the Bulls do. And different guys were able to step up and make shots, or at least adjust the defense. Chris Middleton did not have a great game. He was 1 for 7 from downtown, 4 of 13 from the field. Grayson Allen really struggled. He was 0 points in 18 minutes. Giannis had a nice game with 27, but Brook Lopez bails them out with 18. Drew Holiday hit some big shots, even though not a super efficient night. But it was just different guys stepping up for key baskets or key stops. Bobby Portis, 10 points, 12 boards off the bench in his 23 minutes. And again, just playing that Energizer bunny role. It was a messed up game. Milwaukee holds DeMar DeRozan to 6 of 25 shooting and 18 points, but Nick Vucevic, he had 24 points, 17 boards, but 9 of 27 from the field. So Milwaukee had a few extra guys who were able to get them even 1 or 2 buckets, whereas Chicago had 3 different guys who played and did not score during the game. Milwaukee only had 1 guy, and that was Allen, who went scoreless.
I think what was surprising sort of to me was how Milwaukee was able to buckle down on DeMar DeRozan and make things so difficult for him to be able to sort of get any open shots or any just unharassed shots for the most part. Which again, you step up the intensity on defense. I get it this time of the year. And DeMar DeRozan is a guy that we were thinking like, dude, like he had a case for MVP through halfway through the season. Like he had been putting up some just killer numbers. Like he'd been scoring at will. And again, say what you want about the time of the season, it's still time to do it. And DeMar DeRozan is no young chicken, right? Like he's not first 3, 4, 5 years in the league. He's, I would say the back end of prime. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. So for it to be that difficult for him was surprising to me. I'm interested to see what it would be like if Milwaukee doesn't commit 21 turnovers. Right, like they turned the ball over a lot in this game, and that kept this game within striking distance for Chicago for a lot longer than the way they were playing, because they had made like 7 3s. They shot like 19% from 3. Like it was just they're off. They were defended well, and like again, you say Patrick Williams was back. He had like 5 points, played like 20 minutes in the game, and and I get it. They just seemed now fall for them. Like they just seem well defended, right? Like this didn't seem like a big like, hey man, Zach LaVine really screwed them over on a couple possessions kind of thing. It's just they're defending champs. Milwaukee's a good basketball team, a really good basketball team, and they showed why, and they showed the fact that they could clamp down on a team and their best scorer going into it and make things difficult for most everybody else. I mean, they scored like 15 points in the fourth quarter. Or allowed Chicago to score like 15. Like it was single digits in like 2 of the 4 quarters. Not single digits, sorry. Under 20 points in 2 of the 4 quarters. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. It was 21 for the first quarter, 15 for the fourth quarter for Chicago. But
it's close.
I was within the shooting distance of being right there. But Milwaukee, Milwaukee's a better team.
Yes.
Right? This game showed it. I think Chicago might be able to get one. But those 21 turnovers and the way that defense was played, maybe Milwaukee eases up a little and relaxes, maybe in a game 5 at home or something. I don't know. I don't feel it though. I feel like this is 5 at the most. Like they played so well defensively and still won by near double digits at the end. And Joel committed a ton of turnovers.
Milwaukee, in their 9-man rotation, does not have a single minus defender to be found anywhere. They've got a couple of elite all-NBA defenders in Giannis and then Drew Holiday. But they've got some really, really strong defenders on top of that. And Brook Lopez, who, his block rate is always really high. Wes Matthews, who is a very compromised player offensively at this point in his career, still is a very solid defender. Pat Connaughton is a solid defender. Javon Carter's a plus defender. Bobby Portis, as long as he plays within the defensive role, is very strong. And even Grayson Allen is a very solid defender. Then you still got Serge Ibaka, who didn't even play, kind of waiting on reserve in case one of Milwaukee's bigs gets in foul trouble. I don't think Serge is going to play much in this series because Chicago doesn't have the personnel where they really go big much at all. but Milwaukee just has it, you know. Chicago, on the other hand, like you said, they played a good defensive game. Milwaukee wasn't sharp really on offense. They made some stupid turnovers, but Chicago does have a few guys within the rotation who are maybe minus defenders. Zach LaVine is improved as a defensive player. He's competing. His head is at least on straight, but I'm not sure I would even call him an average defender yet at this point. And there's a couple of others where it's kind of touch and go. Kobe White can kind of be there sometimes, and Derek Jones Jr., despite being so lanky and able to play above the rim, we all know that, he makes some mistakes defensively that a guy who's been in the league as long as he has really shouldn't. So you're right. I think the personnel for Milwaukee is just better. They've got a clear-cut MVP candidate on their team, as well as the supporting cast. They've done this before. Really, the entire core, with the exception of Grayson Allen and Javon Carter, were all here last year, you know, for this championship, or have been within the Bucks organization before, and that would be Wes Matthews. So, yeah, they're going to be scary. I don't think the 3 seed means anything in the case of Milwaukee. They were clearly keeping it on cruise control during the year. They had some major injuries they had to deal with. You know, Brook Lopez only just came back recently, but they're going to be scary in this round. You are going to have to play at a championship level to oust them in any of these rounds. That doesn't mean Milwaukee is the prohibitive favorite to repeat, but you're going to have to be elite to exit this team from the playoffs.
Denver Golden State I want to talk about next, mainly because I want to see if you are ready to get on board the Arky Shea Golden State sweeping train, led by 20 in the fourth quarter.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Start by the fourth quarter, ended up losing by 16, did Denver. Jokic had a really, really, really nice game. Maybe not MVP. No. I mean, he was 4 assists a shot from a triple-double. What am I talking about? He had a really good game. But Joel C. Cortez, Golden State, tough. They tough, bro. They are tough. So are you with me? Are you on the Arky train yet for that Buffalo nickel? Golden State looking sweep. They looked really, really good.
I'm not on that train yet, not only out of pride, but also because the odds are still in my favor. You predicted sweep or nothing else. We said a 5-game series is kind of a push, and I just got to get to 6 or 7. I think Denver is good enough to still win a couple of games in this series. But yeah, Golden State, they were my pick to win the West. At the beginning of the season, I've kind of held on to that even as they had their struggles. I think they'd be prohibitive favorites at this point to win the title if James Wiseman had come back in time. But they dealt with a lot of injuries. And yet here we are, that Steph Curry can come off the bench, struggle early, and Golden State still looks dominant because a guy like Jordan Poole has cut his teeth over the last few seasons when the Warriors have been down.
Man.
But that's a guy who's gotten to play in big minutes. He's been coached up.
30.
He's gotten to play with the veterans off and on enough, as well as these secondary guys who've been kind of groomed for a while now to step into big roles. And I've said this many times before, but I'm going to say it again. This Warriors team is deeper than anything over the last 4 years or so, but they are as deep, if not deeper, than those teams that won the early pre-Kevin Durant championships, for Golden State. They are so deep with role players who are going to step in, do their job, give you a different look, a different dimension. It's like having a stacked bullpen and an option for everything.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got a couple of guys who, on any given night are going to throw 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, and that's what the Warriors have right now. So yes, Denver is not the favorite. I think Denver is good enough, better than people give them credit for. I don't think their supporting cast gets enough credit. We all want to give Jokic his laurels for leading them to where they've gotten, and that's true. But I think the supporting cast has been far better than advertised and fits, and that's a testament to those guys. It's a testament to Coach Mike Malone and a couple of guys who, didn't play very well DeMarcus Cousins, don't get yourself ejected, friend. Don't
Why
do
not?
that.
Why not? He's great at it.
There's a couple of guys on the bench who I think will have better games as we go along. So I do think the Nuggets get at least one to give me that push. But I'm going to go with 6 at this point based on what I've seen instead of 7.
All right, fair enough. I don't have much on this. I told you I thought this game was going to be a sweep. It played out, and it's nice to be able to have a role player like Steph Curry come off the bench for you when it's time and throw up what was it, 15, 16 points, and not be like a huge difference maker, right? Like as he starts to get back into the groove. So yeah, it's it's not the way I thought Denver would be coming into the postseason at the beginning of the season, because as you know, I was very high on Denver. But where they are, it's just a bad matchup. I think it's a really, really bad matchup for them.
And somebody like Otto Porter Jr., former lottery pick whose career's been derailed by injuries, he's bounced around. He comes to the Warriors with 0 expectations at this point, except to try to make the roster. He's been very, very helpful as a starter or a role player off the bench. Dude only scored 4 points during the game, got 4 assists, and you're like, big deal. But he was plus 21 in his 25 minutes. And that's what I love about this Warriors team. It's what I loved about them last year, even when they were essentially a 500 team, was just these other guys who fit. And when they come on the floor, you can sense certain things just start to click. The eyeball test gets passed and the analytics test gets passed. Gary Payton II, only 5 points in his 20 minutes, but he was a plus 12 and gave them that spark. And they went 10 deep, did Golden State. And it could be a different 5 guys off the bench, honestly, because Jonathan Kuminga didn't play much. Juan Toscano-Anderson only got garbage buckets, but Damian Lee, Marcus Moody, all of those guys have played key minutes for the Warriors through Moses Moody, have played key minutes for the Warriors throughout this season. And that's the difference between a Steve Kerr coach team, Monty Williams, Greg Popovich versus somebody like Tom Thibodeau. These coaches have gotten their entire roster minutes and time and opportunities and coaching throughout the year, sometimes by necessity, but so many times by design, so that when they get to these big moments, the bullpen, so to speak, is ready. Whether they play or not, they're ready to come in. They know what their job is. There's no variable or unexpected thing that they're not going to be able to handle. And some other coaches who just want to play their 8 guys the entire season, you very rarely walk into the playoffs with those same 8, 9 guys. And things happen. And then when somebody comes in off the bench and isn't ready, or the chemistry is just not there among the group, everybody, including the coach, wants to throw so-and-so under the bus because they weren't ready. You know what? It's because you didn't get them ready during the regular season. And that's one of the sneaky things that make these Warriors so dangerous, and why it doesn't really matter what Phoenix and Memphis does right now. They get into a series with Golden State and it's just gonna be a dogfight. And obviously the Warriors, they got to take care of business against Denver and so on and so forth. But they're tough. They're so tough. And Draymond Green looks like the Draymond Green of old after really looking rusty here at the end of the regular season.
A couple things. One, wow, for you just to throw all that love to Golden State. Because 2, I agree. Boom, I love that thing. The bench is shortened when you get to the playoffs, right? Generally, but if you're Golden State, you have 100 dudes to choose from, right? That they can, and that makes them dangerous in 6-7 game series against anybody in the league, because they can trust just about anybody out there. And 3, I heard your Tom Thibodeau dig, and I get it. I know you have some pain in there from your heart too, but I'm just gonna tell you, The rumors are that there's a certain coach in Canada that wants out of Canada, and I would love to take him at the New York Knicks. The Toronto Raptors, by the way, did take on the Philadelphia 76ers. And speaking of Nick Nurse, and also speaking of what we thought would be bad matchups for the higher seed, hey-oh, that didn't work out in the first game. Joel Embiid goes for a cool 19 and 15. Tyrese Maxey, that'd been a cool 38, just to throw that out there. You know, dude was going to be the MVP this year, right? Wow, that was kind of solid. And that game got away from Toronto early and often. Joel, I'm giving it off to you. I'm stunned at how that played out in game one. I can't imagine it continues to play out that the rest of the way that way. The way they got so out of hand so quickly for Toronto, they couldn't sort of reel it back to them. But Joel, if Philadelphia looks like this, Philadelphia absolutely is one of the semifinalists this year Eastern Conference.
Yeah, Philadelphia is loaded with a lot of different options. There's still going to be the question marks around James Harden. He didn't shoot the ball well. He was 6 of 17, but James Harden is a very good passer. He got his 14 assists. He was plus 14
assists.
Yeah,
the guy never shares the ball.
Untrue. That's part of that narrative is that, well, Harden's such a ball hog. It's like, no, he's top 2 or 3 in assists every single year. And he was plus 14 in his time on the floor. I think it was a huge deal that they got a big game out of Tobias Harris. When Harris scores the ball well, Philadelphia is incredibly tough to beat. Harris is one of those inconsistent players who's a fringe star, but just not quite consistent enough to really hold that mantle. And when he struggles, Philly oftentimes struggles too. But yeah, Maxey stepped up. And I think in Tyrese Maxey's case, it was a classic example of Toronto, by necessity, having to build their defense to try to pay so much attention to Embiid. Mm-hmm. It only kind of sort of worked. They had to pay so much attention to James Harden. It only kind of sort of worked. And somebody else from Philly, in fact, 2 guys in this case, were able to step up and really have big games. And what makes Philadelphia dangerous is that looking down that bench, you could see a 20-point game from Georges Niang coming up here at some point, canning a bunch of threes. It happens. You could see a 20-point game out of Shake Milton. Most of the other guys in the rotation, Paul Reed, Matisse Thybulle, Furkan Korkmaz, probably not going to be up at that level. And it's been a long time since Danny Green has given you 20 points. But they've got those options. Toronto's got some injury issues to deal with now heading into game 2 as well. Scotty Barnes probably isn't going to play. Gary Trent probably isn't going to play. There was somebody else on the list, I think it was Thad Young, who may not play. And that really could change things as well. I gave Toronto a lot of credit coming into this one because of how flexible they are. They're long, they're athletic. Philadelphia just was kind of giving off some vibes here at the end of the year, like they could be an upset special. So far, so good. If Toronto doesn't have these 3 guys and Gary Trent really struggled. He's an absolute feast or famine player offensively. He has been that way for the Raptors all year. He was like that in Portland as well. If they don't have those 3 guys, this could get ugly real quick, no matter how good of a coach Nick Nurse is, because deep down the bench, Toronto's depth has been suspect all season long.
I will say this, as of recording, the official NBA injury report lists as Thaddeus Young, Gary Trent Jr., and Scotty Barnes as doubtful for tonight's game 2. Yeah. So we will not see those guys tonight. Okay, moving on. I want to go to Phoenix and New Orleans and the Pelicans, because it looked like the Pelicans were about to get run out the gym. They put together a nice third quarter to get back in striking distance, kept Chris Paul in longer, helped me with my fantasy point game with my bet. Thank you very much. Chris Paul goes nuts in the fourth quarter, by the way. And New Orleans doesn't quite get the win, but the final score looks a lot more respectable than I think we were sort of kind of expecting once you got to halftime, only ended up being an 11-point loss. Interesting case here because Brandon Ingram had a really good game. Jonas Valanciunas, 25 rebounds.
He is capable of that. He is such a load inside. He is just such a load to get away from the basket.
He was bananas in that game grabbing those boards.
But he also missed a crap ton of bunnies. He was 7 of 21 from the field. So when you think about that for a second, 25 boards, but 7 of 21 from the field. And that's a testament again to how tough the Suns are inside, because Valanciunas struggled right around the basket where he normally has very good touch. He struggled in that Clippers game as well. I don't think he's going to continue to do that, but they're going to need him to make some of those point blank shots at a higher rate.
So what do you make of this? Phoenix goes up by 20 plus at halftime, clearly relaxes just a little bit. New Orleans, yes, the 8 seed, yes, sort of the team that's the underdog in this, but did not give up, played really well in the third quarter, and made Phoenix earn it in the fourth quarter to hold on in that game. Do you think this is one of those, they had been playing recently, they had the momentum, Brandon Ingram been playing really well, and they sort of just, they were the team that kept their foot on the gas and was trying longer than Phoenix, and this was that sort of that game that woke Phoenix up to say, all right, we got to play 4 quarters. Let's just put these guys out of their misery type of situations.
I don't think so, that it was necessarily a momentum thing, but there is something about this Pelicans team that is really admirable, and it's a testament to Willie Green as coach. And this stat has been repeated ad nauseum, but it ties into my point too. They started out the season 1-12. They started out the season 3-16. They fought. They fought.
They good or bad?
They fought to get themselves into the play-in tournament. They beat the Lakers a couple of times down the stretch. They looked dead in the water at points against the Clippers. You know, they handled their business against San Antonio, did the Pelicans. It was a very hard fought, very fun playoff type of game, and New Orleans was able to capitalize on it and win at home. But against the Clippers, man, on the road in that final play-in tournament, the Clippers just looked so elite, so veteran defensively, and so tough at so many different points. And I'm gonna culp to this. I turned that game off at the end of the third quarter because it was late. I needed to go to bed. I had to work the next morning. It's a West Coast game. I'm on the East Coast. And I went, nice season, New Orleans. But they were down. There was nothing going. LA just had it all. And it was one of those classic things where I wake up the next morning and you look at the result and you go, you gotta be kidding me.
You're like, you click refresh a couple of times.
Yeah, and then you kick yourself for not having sat around. And that's, again, a classic example of why no game is ever over in the NBA. But it just goes into that toughness, that mental toughness for the Pelicans. And Willie Green even said, he's like, I went into the third quarter feeling like, we had a great season. And I had to catch myself and go, wait a minute. I don't want to think like that. I don't want my guys thinking like that. And he pulls off a big speech for them, and they rally and they get something going with their young players. So in a game against Phoenix where the Suns come out, punch, and the Suns just look like the machine that they are, the Pelicans continued to fight. They continued to claw. They got themselves back into it. They're playing with house money at this point. And I'll give you your take here in just a second, but let's circle back in a minute. There is something really unique about this Pelicans roster, too, that I want to touch on in just a second.
Well, I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that the momentum I was thinking was just the fact that they had just been in a situation like this.
Yeah.
Right. Like at halftime, they had just been down a huge amount. And they're like, dude, we just did this. Like, we know what we need to do to get us back into the game. And they outscored Phoenix by, I think, 11 or 12 in the third quarter. And they made Phoenix keep the starters in and put Chris Paul back out there. Chris Paul had I think it was a couple of rebounds shy of a triple-double. He had a phenomenal game in that. Didn't probably expect after halftime to play nearly as much as he had to. But I think there was just something to that type of momentum. Obviously, if it was momentum coming in, they wouldn't be down by 20 plus at halftime, right? Like, you wouldn't have to be worry about Chris Paul getting the numbers they needed to. Again, Chris Paul, thank you, and thank you to New Orleans for forcing him to have to play longer. It helps the brother out. But Joe, I think that this was the game that, not if Phoenix was going to lose one, because I thought this felt like a sweep. This was the one where the challenge was going to happen. It ended up being a third quarter challenge, and I guess that's sort of when they let their foot off the gas, because this Phoenix roster is just bonkers. And just quickly, can I say, you got to pay Ayton. You got to pay DeAndre Ayton, man. Like 21-9 in this game. The dude's like 12 years old. Like, I know he keeps getting younger every time I talk about him. But like, you got to pay the man his money. Like, he is worth his weight in gold at this point. Like, he's the future of this team. He and Devin Booker are the now and the future of the Phoenix Suns.
So is Mikal Bridges.
And Mikal Bridges, yeah. I've just been on the DeAndre Ayton train for a while. But yeah Mikal Bridges, like, this pay him. What are we waiting on, cheapy owner? Okay, that's a bad situation in there. I get it. But someone now needs to pay DeAndre Ayton his money. Joel, you have a unique roster thing. Please go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I'll just say this about
we have two very sticky games to bring.
Only Ayton and the Suns. Only an owner like Robert Sarver could screw this up. Man. Only an owner like Sarver, and he has screwed up the Phoenix Suns multiple times where they, sold draft picks for money that could have turned into Rajon Rondo and Luol Deng and putting those guys alongside Steve Nash and company. They could have kept on, held on to Joe Johnson, for example, and they cheapened out, and you just don't want to see history repeat itself here. But for me, if I'm Phoenix, win the championship this year, guys, because it is a weird situation. There's a lot of different variables. Chris Paul is obviously getting older. They've got,
he's playing MVP basketball still.
They have a theoretical long window because of their youth. But win now. Win it now, Phoenix. This is your shot.
Win it while you have Chris Paul. Like, Chris Paul is definitely a huge straw in this drink. And if you lose him, there could be other good straws. We've seen Devin Booker play fine. You have good guys there, but when you have a generational talent like Chris Paul, you're not going to get 7 more years with them, or 5 more years, or probably even more than a couple more years of elite Chris Paul play. And I saw a friend.
This is the perfect role that he can be their 4th best player, essentially. Yeah. It's the perfect role.
I saw a friend say recently on Twitter that watching Chris Paul is so fun because sometimes, and more often than you're probably accustomed to, he'll put on a stretch where he'll remind you why he's one of the greatest talents of his generation. And it's true. The fourth quarter was a huge example of that against New Orleans. You're just like, man, we always sort of gave that guy crap, man. And this guy would have championships if he was allowed to be traded to the Lakers. And this dude would be, I mean, I don't know what it is. He's played at franchises that sort of just get forgotten about. Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. We just sort of forget about Chris Paul when we talk about the greatest over the last 20 years.
He is the textbook definition of a floor general in every sense. And you can put any of the Hall of Fame floor generals up against Chris Paul, and he will not only hold his own, but might even still be more of a perfect prototype than whoever you want to pick. Magic Johnson, John Stockton, Isaiah Thomas, any of those guys included.
Can you imagine if Chris Paul had gotten a third of the hype and discussion that LeBron gets, on just a, but he's played for franchises that no one talks about. And so no one gives him all the highlights and kudos, and you have to go out of your way to sort of show the guy some love and to see his highlights and stuff. And it's it's been his entire career.
Absolutely. And real quick, as an aside on the Pelicans roster, and then we'll get very quickly to the 2 series that none of us really care about at this point. But I think the days of everybody trying small ball are not only ended, but at the very least about to end. You have a couple of teams, including the Cleveland Cavaliers, who found an identity by playing huge, by going against the grain, by being switchy enough to do it. And the Pelicans, I think, are one of these counterculture rosters. When you look at what they've been trotting out, you've got Jonas Valanciunas, who, he's listed as 6'11", but is a legit 7-footer. Same thing for Jackson Hayes. I think Jackson Hayes is probably 7'1" or 7'2" with incredibly long arms. You got Brandon Ingram, who's got one of the longest wingspans ever. They put Herb Jones next to him, who's only listed as 6'7", and there's no way that's possible. Herb Jones is a clean 6'10", 6'11", also incredibly long arm. CJ McCullum, who's an average size guard, no longer has to play undersized 2. He's playing normal as a point guard. But they've gone big at 4 out of the 5 positions. Then coming off the bench, you can bring a bigger forward like Larry Nance Jr. Trey Murphy III is another guy, the rookie from Virginia, is another guy that's just so long, so ridiculously long. And they've got another one in Najee Marshall. They've obviously had a plan of just collecting these guys, but they all can play. They're not just, lanky guys who are falling all over themselves. And so New Orleans at any given time is putting 3 to 4 of these just really long players out there. And I think it's been one of the things that has helped them muck up games, stay in games, turn things around. Yeah, they make rookie mistakes, sophomore mistakes. They're not perfect. They got a long ways to go. But think about that length if they ever get Zion back alongside it. Because what is Zion besides a generational offensive talent? He's an undersized guy on defense. Not a bad defender, but an undersized one. And so you're going to put all this length around him.
He's your point guard. He's your point guard.
He could be,
Like defensively, he could be your point guard. Like he's the one.
It's going to be interesting what they do. I think New Orleans and Cleveland especially are very much prototypes to change what the roster paradigm has been here over the last 5-6 years, and that's all I'll say on it for now.
Keep doing 720 dunks before games, brother. I love seeing those, and then showing out with like thousands of dollars of diamonds on, and like we just never get to see you again. That sucks. Speaking of sucks, these last 2 games sucked. Miami just anacondaed Atlanta.
That's a great way to put it.
Man,
that's perfect.
They just suffocated Trae Young, everybody in that game. That game felt like a mercy killing, although mercy killings are fast. This one took 48 minutes to happen. Joel, Atlanta loses game 1. The good news is it only counts technically as a 1-point loss, like in your brain, right? It's just a loss. You don't lose all the games because you lost it that way. But that was a tough one, man. That was a really tough way for Atlanta to lose that game, and sort of a reminder why Miami was the number 1 seed, why Miami was so poised to keep their number 1 ranking throughout the muck of the season when everybody was losing everybody. They're going to be a tough out, but defensively, Joel, that was hard to watch.
Yeah, it got out of hand almost immediately and never got even remotely better. And yes, the Atlanta Hawks were missing Clint Capella, and that would have made 0 difference whatsoever
Not in
this one. Granted, you had a lot of Hawks who uncharacteristically missed shots, but it felt like every single shot was tough. Every single shot was contested. It legitimately felt like Miami was playing with 6 guys out there at any given time. And
Trae Young was 1 of 12, man.
Yeah.
That is...
Now, he struggled for a bit in that Cleveland game, and that was a phenomenal game in the play, and that's one of the classic games that I was talking about. But yeah, for him to come off of getting his shot, getting his footing, he had done that in the Hawks' first game of the play-in too. And so, yeah, he struggled during the first half, and we're all going, all right, we've seen this before. Trae's going to be fine. In the second half, he'll get it going. No, he did not.
No.
He absolutely did not.
Nope.
Miami has an identity, and we talked about this a few weeks ago when there was that dust up between Jimmy Butler and Udonis Haslem, also the week before that when we were really trying to evaluate what made them tick. And no, they're not the most talented team out there, and they can be beat, I think, at times, but you're going to have to work your tail off to beat them on any given night. It is an ensemble cast with just enough star power and just enough different options, but they do absolutely have an identity, and it is that tough defensive-minded type of team, a veteran team, an unselfish team. You know, like that classic quote now from Ja Morant, we want all the smoke, we're going to run up the chimney. That is Miami to a T. Like, They want the smoke from themselves, right? They want to fight each other,
right?
And they want to fight you and make you work for it. So Invincible, no. This is not a lock of a team to get out of this Eastern Conference because Milwaukee's so good, because Philly could be so good. We'll see who comes out alive from the Boston-Brooklyn series, but either of those teams conceivably could make the NBA Finals as well. It's going to be a dogfight, but Miami is one big, mean, vicious dog in this fight,
Yeah, they're one you do not want the ball to go over the fence to go take on right now, because I don't think there could have been a worse matchup for Atlanta.
That's probably true
in this playoff. Like, God bless them for fighting and getting all the way back in and waving goodbye to the
Cavs,
the Cavs fans. It's not a good matchup. This smells like Sweep City. I think
it's
just the way these two match up and the way Miami plays defense is just vicious.
If you think about it, it's in Miami's best interest here, not because they're banged up, but to dispatch of Atlanta as quickly as possible, knowing that Brooklyn, Boston probably goes 7 games. We're all going to be waiting around on that. Milwaukee's probably going to get done pretty quick with their series. Philly might. We'll see. So much depends on that injury issue. But Miami, as an older team, take care of business, get that rest, use that number 1 seed to its fullest advantage, because they're going to need it. It's going to get tougher from here. But yeah, this is a terrible matchup for Atlanta.
Joe, finally, let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks losing to the Utah Jazz.
Do we have to? No, I'm kidding. Let's do it.
Game 2 is tonight, and it looks like it listed officially as Luka as doubtful for tonight as well. He misses Game 1. Joel, I like Dallas going into this. I don't like it if Luka can't play. That's I laughed so I don't cry for that pick. But is it fair to say that Luka can't win? Excuse me, if Dallas can't win if Luka can't play? Not necessarily a game this series.
Yeah, they probably can't win the series, no. They might be able to steal a game or two here, which is really, you just got to lengthen the series if you're Dallas.
It needs to be now because you're at home. Like, you get this home game tonight.
Utah's a really tough place to play. We all know that. But this Jazz team is suddenly very flawed despite having basically the exact same pieces that made them the number 1 seed last season, right? Like, they've just taken that step back, and whatever it is, it's not clicking on all cylinders right now for Utah. So Dallas, it was a testament to them that it was such a close game that they were able to keep it within 6. They were up at various points through that one. It's a testament to Dallas, but it's also a major knock on Utah as well, that they wouldn't be able to take care of a Mavericks
think that's a great way to put it.
that struggles so hard to manufacture points when so much runs through Luka. He is the engine that makes the machine go. And this is, Luka's been banged up the last couple of playoffs a little bit, where he's been fighting through stuff, or Kristaps Porzingis was fighting through stuff agast the Clippers.
Makes you worry a little, right?
It does.
Just a little bit, just in the back of the head. You just,
This was the strongest season from the Mavericks in the last 3 years. This was the year where it's like, all right, I think they got something. They might be able to put this together and finally not only win a playoff series, but maybe win a couple of playoff series. It's looking real dicey right now. And yeah, Luka's young, but you don't want to keep hitting the reset, let's play better next year type of button. But this is not a very compelling series at this point. That's unfortunate because the Jazz were a good basketball team. Right now, they're an okay basketball team.
We keep flying the banner for Utah and like the teams like Utah and Denver. And then we run into a series like this where this is your NBA TV series right now. This should be like, it's just, there's no real superstar power. The two teams just aren't that compelling.
But they both will play good basketball. So if you're a diehard, and you appreciate
if you're
NBA
a diehard, you have
basketball,
NBA TV. You go watch an NBA TV.
Yeah. It's not a trash series like Miami Atlanta, but you're right. It's not going to pull any of the fence riders over to this one without Luka on the floor. Sorry, Donovan Mitchell, you just don't have that kind of draw.
Hold on. Joel, back in my day, playoff games used to be in the 80s and 90s. All right. This is the basketball I respect. Okay. This is the ball that I grew up on, not whatever they're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what accent I try to do. They're probably not a good one of anything. But
Well,
Joe, yeah, this is why we'll spend the shortest amount of time on this. This series sucks, man. Like this in Atlanta, those two series, and I would say they're not all winners, right? Sometimes the matchups just come out and you're just not as excited about some than the other. And if you have to rank them, these two are at the bottom of the list.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This, my friends, has been episode 102, the Jack Sikma episode. And let's just keep in mind that Jack Sikma's 4 nicknames listed on Basketball Reference: Goldilocks, Banger, the Wickert Wonder, and Big Boy. I have never heard any of those 4 nicknames used for Jack Sikma. Granted, he's slightly before my time, but I am really, really, really just perplexed. Very perplexed about this. And again, Sikma, a guy who averaged 15 and 10 for his career, and most importantly, the prototypical, the originator, the progeny, stretch 5.
I like the Wicker Wonder. Like, was he made of is he like a rattan furniture? Like, what is like?
Yeah, it's not wicker like wicker furniture. It's Wickert, but he's from Kankakee, Illinois. So it's not like that was the name of his hometown. I don't know if that's like his high school he went to, or I don't understand.
I bet that's not even a thing. All right, I'm not even gonna look it up. That's how much I care.
He's a Hall of Famer, 7-time All-Star, and a 1979 NBA champ.
He's a Hall of Famer. Does everybody get in the NBA Hall of Fame?
But Sikma deserves to be in. His numbers are decent. He was on the all-defensive team, the all-rookie team, and again, a 7-time All-Star.
All right, Mr. Hardo. All right,
relax. It's again being an iconic type of player who changed the game, and he was one of the guys who kind of ushered in the ability to shoot those threes.
If you're made of, front porch furniture, I get it. So that's fine. All right, my bad. I can't believe there's not a lot of furniture I know that's played professional basketball, so you're right.
Well, I mean, Darko Milicic, or no, who was it? It wasn't Darko Milicic. It was, I can't remember his name. It's we'll have to save this for next episode. It was somebody from the Dallas Mavericks who they drafted him. He had a really good workout, but it was against folding chairs. That story goes with Darko as well, but there was another guy too. Well, I'm going to have to look that up. So what a way to
right now, see if I can find him right before we leave.
It was another big gumpy white guy that
is it Yi Jinlin?
No, he was accused of that as well. It was not him. He was a draft pick by the Bucks and then went to the Nets. Brad, was it Brad Sellers? I don't know. I'm gonna have to look it up. We'll see.
One last click, and I got nothing. All right, that's a good way to end it. Let's end it on a feeling of, all right.
Folding chairs.
Bye, Joel. We're on YouTube, right?
We are. And Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts.